Okay, at this time we're going to be hearing from Dennis Petrie, Deputy Director, Workforce Services Branch, Employment Development Department. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Assembly. It's a privilege and honor for me to be here today. I would just like to build upon the testimony of Mr. Rainey. The Employment Development Department, and specifically the Workforce Services Branch, operates and delivers their programs within the framework that was described by Mr. Rainey. We work in collaboration and partnership at the local level with the 19 mandated partners of the one-stop system. And as you heard from previous testimony, we work very closely with the CalHR, with Work for Warriors, and other state organizations to integrate and support one another's services. Over the past 5 years, due to both the improving economy, both nationally and here in California, as well as federal, state, and local efforts, have contributed significantly to the reduction of the unemployment rate of California's veterans. Over the past 5 years, the unemployment rate for California's veterans have decreased by 4 percentage points. In December of 2011, the unemployment rate was 10.6%, and in December of 2015, it has come down to 6.6%. It is our hope and our expectation, as the economy continues to improve and the framework that Tim spoke about is implemented here in the state of California, this downward trend should continue. EDD specifically has responsibility for a number of those 19 partners and programs that are part of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Specifically within the Unemployment Development Department and the Workforce Services Branch, with regard to our labor exchange system that you have heard already referenced as the CalJobs, one of the elements of that particular labor exchange, where we're capturing the jobs that employers are creating in California and the vacancies, and we are trying to match the job seeker, and specifically the veteran job seeker, with those employers. All new jobs are every new job that we receive within the CalJob system is put on what's called a 24-hour hold, so that it is only available to be viewed by veterans, which give veterans a leg up in terms of getting their resumes off to those employers. Another program that we have that was referenced previously is the Jobs for Veterans State Grant. That provides resources to the Employment Development Department to hire staff, primarily Disabled Veterans Opportunity Program, that was referred to as the DVOP, as well as the local veteran employment representatives, and those were referred to as the LVERs. DVOPs and LVERs are prescribed to serve primarily those veterans and spouses who have significant barriers to employment. The resources received by the Employment Development Department funds approximately 177 of those particular classifications, and we're very happy to report all of those men and women in those positions are veterans. Within the Workforce Services Branch specifically, over 10% of our workforce are veterans. In addition to the Jobs for Veterans State Grant, we operate what's called the Work Opportunity Tax Credit Program. Assemblymember Thurman, that is responsive to the item that you brought forth. It is an incentive, a tax credit incentive program for employers who do hire veterans. We have now operated for the past 8 years a job, career, and resource fair. It is known as the Honor a Hero, Hire a Vet. Assemblymember Mathis, that is specifically targeted to veterans. The Employment Development Department invests approximately $250,000 a year to operate those specific programs, and a portion of that funding is earmarked specifically for outreach and advertising efforts to veterans so that they become aware that this event is taking place. We bring employers.
Is that including the federal funding side as well? Is that a combined with state and federal, or is that just?
With regard to the Employment Development Department, our funding is all federal funding specific to the Workforce Services Branch. There are no general fund appropriations to veteran services as it pertains to the programs and services of the Employment Development Department. So, yes, sir, that is federal funding that we invest there. We operate 9 to 10 Honor Hero, Hire a Vet events throughout the state of California every year. And as you can well imagine, those events are dispersed geographically throughout the state of California to ensure that all markets and all veterans have that opportunity to come together with employers. We made reference earlier to the CalJobs labor exchange system. The Employment Development Department 3 years ago brought up this new system that has much more advanced technology and has specific sections for employers to find the resumes of veterans and also for veterans to find employers who put a high premium on hiring veterans within their organizations. In addition to the Honor a Hero, Hire a Vet events, as some of you may well be aware, we also work very closely with many of your offices to create job, career, and resource fairs for job seekers and many times very specific veteran-focused events. We also have, as Mr. Rainey alluded to, the Veteran Employment Assistance Program. Approximately $5 million of federal funds, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act federal funds, are granted out. An application process. It's a competitive process. All federal funds do need to be granted and allocated through a competitive process. So every year we put out this particular solicitation. Anywhere between $4 million and $5 million, depending upon the resource availability. Typically, those are the community-based organizations that are responsive to that. Many of the organizations that belong to the California Association of Veteran Service Organizations are grantees, and they provide specific services to veterans. And these grants are let and specifically to the community-based organizations that work many times outside of the parameters of the workforce system and the one-stops. In the last couple of years, we have put some prescriptions in that particular solicitation to better integrate the programs and services of those CAVSA organizations with the infrastructure of the one-stop system within the state of California. We are working in concert with Work for Warriors, as was presented in the previous testimony, as well as participate in the Governor's Interagency Council on Veterans. The Employment Development Department, of course, we operate the Unemployment Insurance Program. There is a very specific program that targets veterans. And so one of the ways that we reach veterans is when we mine our database so that when veterans who or military personnel separate from service, they come back to the state of California, they are eligible for unemployment benefits. Those men and women who apply for unemployment benefits are now in our data systems, and so we mine those data systems, Assemblymember Mathis and other members, in order to send specific messaging to those men and women about the services of the AJCC system, America's Job Centers of California, as well as directing them to many of the grantees who have received funds and are delivering a number of programs for them as well. And just to be sensitive to the time that of other speakers and your time as well, I'm going to conclude my remarks at this particular point. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And I appreciate the staff because I did put together some handouts for all of you. If you have any questions, either today or later, I have an open email policy. Send me any question, and I will be as responsive and quickly responsive as I'm able. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Petrie. We may have testimony from the other panelists later, but I did want to ask you, with regards to the state plan, goal to achieve the 1 million industry-recognized credentials over the next 10 years, does that include occupational licenses?
I would say that if one is pursuing a program of study that results in a certificate, absolutely. And there is, as Mr. Rainey had already indicated, there is engagement and work that is taking place now in order to ensure that licensing and the curriculum and the certifications that our returning veterans have in California, we are moving to navigate more expeditious ways so that our friends at the Department of Consumer Affairs will honor a number of those certificates as well.
So with that said, are the licensing boards and the Department of Consumer Affairs, are they part of these discussions, one, and two, should they be?
There's this convoluted system, Assemblymember Hernandez, yeah, I would say that we are absolutely working in partnership in order to do that. I have been, much like a previous presenter, the Employment Development Department is steadfast to stay in our lane and our area of responsibility, and this is an area of responsibility for the State Workforce Investment Board. And I believe that Mr. Rainey could probably be far more responsive to that relative to the work that they're doing.
Please.
We are working on licensing, and we're going to continue to do more work there. Our focus, though, currently is primarily around certificates that are awarded through community colleges primarily, and making sure that those certificates that are awarded are relevant and in demand in regional labor markets. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done at the regional level, calibrating supply and demand so that the certificates that are awarded have real labor market value, that employers know them, they understand that they embody the skills and aptitudes that they want to buy, and that the public system produces those. So it's not just about the number of a million. That's important. It's a big stretch goal over the next 10 years, but it's really about quality more than quantity.
Just to add on, and when I'm at the convoluted system, with regard to Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act dollars, the investment of those dollars in support of an individual's training, they can only use those training dollars in curriculum that appears on what's called the eligible training provider list. And so the State Workforce Investment Board is working directly with the Department of Consumer Affairs, who to another member's question about those for-profit organizations that are marketing their programs and services to veterans through the GI Bill. The effort that we've been doing is trying to get concurrence and system alignment so that much like WIOA dollars cannot be spent in training that does not appear on the eligible training provider list. We've been working with the Department of Consumer Affairs to ensure that those entities that they're certifying in the nonprofit world also meet the same standards for listing on the eligible training provider list as those nonprofit organizations.
Thank you, Mr. Petrie. At this time, we do have a question from Vice Chairman Mathis.
Got a few questions, actually. There's a lot of talk of integrating, but then it's pointed down to the local level. I think integrating up here at a Sacramento level amongst the agencies will do a lot more and go a lot farther in making sure the money actually gets appropriated down. And I couldn't help, you mentioned the unemployment rates in December and saying, okay, unemployment went down, but most of us do realize that that's seasonal hires, and most of those people eventually get their hours cut down. So we need to be careful on what numbers exactly we're looking at. But specifically for you, Mr. Petrie, what is being done at the local EDD level for helping veterans? Because I understand that most of the offices only have 1 or 2 folks there that are actually trained for working with veterans. So a veteran will come into the office and then they get put on a waiting list to actually talk to the veteran representatives within the office instead of somebody who's sitting around maybe working on some other part of their caseload, but they can help that veteran as well. So what is actually being done at that level to address those problems in the caseload management there?
Thank you for that question. As I indicated previously, the Jobs for Veterans State grant, that is the grant that supports those specialized employees to serve the disabled veteran. So within that system of cooperation, and that's really the way that we are going to be able to achieve the best bang for our buck, is integrating our service delivery and marshaling all of these various programs and services to the benefit of the job seeker. We have various models within a number of America's Job Centers. It's a negotiation, conversation with the other partners. So there we have created what we call Veteran Service Navigators, VSNs, that will do the triage. We have veteran priority of service that also has to be demonstrated within the processes of an AJCC, America's Job Center of California. So we do work to have veterans self-identify. Those veterans that self-identify, it's basically they get to go to the front of the line. At that particular point, the Veteran Service Navigators do the triage to do the assessment to determine whether or not that particular veteran meets the criteria established within the national grant.
The problem is that there's a waiting list for them to talk to that veteran liaison. They go in, and it's creating a backlog, is what's happening.
Assembly member, I do not have a waiting list of
well, I'm not
veterans.
saying you do, but your local offices do.
I would cordially disagree with you, sir.
Okay, so it's just a question and answer. With all due respect to everybody, panelists and colleagues, if we can ask a question, that the question be answered. Seems like that is the answer coming from Mr. Petrie at this time. Folks, we are very tight on time. We're going to move forward with the next 2 speakers, but I will ask you to be very cognizant of the fact that we have 10 minutes that are allocated left, and we still have another panel that will succeed you. So if you can try to keep it as timely and limited as possible. So with that, we'll move on to the next presenter, Mr. Glenn Foreman, Deputy Chief, Division of Apprenticeship Standards, Department of Industrial Relations.
Thank you. Oh, there were the buttons on. Cool. Assembly members, thank you very much for this opportunity. Apprenticeship used to be considered one of the best kept secrets in the state of California. Apprenticeship is probably the best employment-based training model that's available for one reason, and the main reason only. It's a work-based learning. They're working full-time, going to school part-time. I will keep my remarks brief. Basically, on the selection of apprentices, once an apprentice gets into an apprenticeship program, they're on a career path that can make them in upwards of over $100,000 a year in some trades and some occupations. It's not just building trades. The firefighters have a huge apprenticeship program. The correctional officers, as mentioned before, they have an apprenticeship program, and they both focus on trying to get veterans into their programs. Most, if not all, of our apprenticeship programs have direct entry or advanced entry for veterans that have served in the military. I had to pull back one of my committees a couple of months ago because they wanted to make a policy where they only hired veterans. Well, equal opportunity and apprenticeship kind of takes care of that one, but there is a lot of that. As far as getting apprentices into the program, we go out and we have a staff of about 25 field consultants. We go out to these field, any veteran of a career fair that is even put out there as a high priority to make sure that we're out there promoting apprenticeship programs and apprenticeship opportunities, not only to the veterans, but also to the employers. The Division of Apprenticeship Standards will set up an apprenticeship program for one veteran and one employer if 100 veterans in an employer that has 5,000. We don't care. Every apprentice, especially veterans, are a high priority for the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. The biggest advantage for the veterans is that they have a GI benefit. It actually offsets their cost, or not their cost, but their wages. When an apprentice starts, they start at about 50 to 60% of the journeyman wage. When the GI benefit will actually pay them to where they're almost making journeyman wage from day one, which is a huge benefit for a veteran coming back with a family. Other than that, we're committed and we'll go forth, and I'll keep my remarks short unless there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, hearing and seeing no hands for questions, we'll move on to the next presenter, Mr. Stuart Cox, Executive Director, Employment Training Panel.
Good morning, members. I'm Stuart Knox, the Employment Training Panel Director for the State of California, and I'll also keep my remarks very quick. The Employment Training Panel provides funding to employers to assist upgrading the skills of the workers through the training that leads to good paying and long-term jobs. The ETP was created in 1982 by the California State Legislature and is funded by California employers through a California State Legislature and is a special payroll tax. The businesses that enter into agreements with the panel are performance-based contracts, and these are not grants to these employers. The ETP is a funding agency, and we do not define the training by those employers either. The businesses determine their best training needs and how to provide those training. Annually, we award approximately $90 million in contracts to employers within the state of California. ETP launched its first veterans program about 5 years ago and sits on the California Interagency Council on Veterans created by the governor. Our initial focus was on the new hire training for veterans seeking jobs after returning from recent deployment. However, recently, the outreach to retraining veterans as incumbent workers, which is initially what ETP was designed to do, has been expanded. Our funding provides an incentive, longer hours for training, and small increases to reimbursement to those employers for the training cost. As a result of this shift, ETP is pleased to state that we are seeing a significant increase since this time last year. The panel has taken the VETS program very seriously, asking staff to work with each and every employer since this time last year, identifying their efforts as recruitment and retraining of veterans. Of course, we are continuing the new hire outreach, but one of our newest website features, ETP Salutes, recognizes employers that step up with the veterans training component. For example, in this fiscal year, last fiscal year, 14-15, ETP had only about 12 contracts with about 105 veterans enrolled in the system. In just the first half of this fiscal year, in our new design, employers have enrolled over 650 veterans to date. We have also developed a streamlined service interaction with our partners here at the state level as well. When we fund training to employers who develop VETS projects, we link with other veteran services within the region to assure that they're getting qualified candidate pool for the job creation component. So when we talk about the American Job Centers for California, we work with those centers as well when those employers are developing and doing job creation in that local area. Another important partner to the State Division of Apprenticeship Standards, as Glenn mentioned, we have a separate training initiative for the journeyman and apprenticeship training, available to any program sponsored, registered within the Department of Apprenticeship Standards. So again, there's a natural crosswalk for us to train and do apprenticeship training programs with the JATCs as well. ETP funds with the JATCs, complements of the GI Bill housing stipend paid directly to the veteran. And again, thank you and if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing and seeing none, I'd like to recognize the participation of Assemblymember Dodd and Mr. Wilk, who have joined us here today. Thank you, panelists. You've done a great job, and thank you for answering the questions and being thoughtful about what you brought forward here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to our final panel and then to public comment. We have licensing trends and training models. And three members of this panel. I want to thank you for joining us today. We have Melinda McLean, the Deputy Director of the Legislation and Regulatory Review, Department of Consumer Affairs. Also, Amy Kennedy, the Veteran Affairs Coordinator, Veteran Affairs Center, Solano Community College. And Jed Grant, an Army veteran and professional board member of the Physician Assistant Board. Thank you so much for coming today, and we look forward to hearing from you on this very important issue of veterans in our workforce. We'll lead off with Melinda McCain. Thank you so much.
Hello, good morning and soon to be afternoon. Again, my name is Melinda McClain. I'm the Deputy Director of Legislative and Regulatory Review for the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today regarding the process for the Department of Consumer Affairs in the area of licensure for members of the militaries and their families. The Department of Consumer Affairs is here to protect and serve California consumers simultaneously while ensuring a competent and fair marketplace. The department is comprised of 40 or so boards, bureaus, committees, and a commission that regulate a wide range of professions and occupations. While consumer protection is our primary mission, over the past few years, the governor has signed legislation that made assisting military members and their families a priority for the department. I'd like to take this time to update you on the progress the department has made on implementing these bills. Assembly Bill 1588, authored by Speaker Atkins and signed in 2012, granted military licensees the ability to request a waiver from renewal requirements such as completing a renewal form and paying renewal fees. This provides significant value to licensees in the military who are called to serve in remote locations without access to necessary resources such as regular mail or internet. All boards have implemented this bill and is accepting waiver requests. In fact, according to our boards, we have processed over 450 waivers since the enactment of this bill. Also, in 2012, Assembly Bill 1904, authored by then Assemblymember Marty Block, was signed and required all boards under the department to expedite the licensure process for the spouse or domestic partner of a member of the military and licensed in that profession in another state. This mainly benefits those individuals who, through no control of their own, are relocated from one state to another in the service of this country. The intent is to place individuals at the front of the line and ensure that the impact to their lives due to seeking licensure in California is minimal. This bill has also been implemented by all department boards, and according to our boards, we have expedited over 800 applicants under this bill. The final piece of legislation I would like to discuss is Senate Bill 1226, authored by Senator Correa and signed in 2014. This requires all boards under the department beginning July 1st, 2016, to expedite the licensure process for members of the military who have been honorably discharged. We have communicated the importance of this legislation to the boards, and implementation should be very similar to the process used with spouses of the military. The department is also working to implement data gathering on the number of military members within the licensing populations of the boards. While broad, department-wide initiatives are good to implement some changes, such as the ones I've previously mentioned, we would like to be able to target specific boards and license types to maximize the benefit to military members. Gathering data will allow us to understand which professions former military members are entering and look at how we can best assist them with their transition to civilian life. I would also like to update the committee that the department signed a memorandum of understanding with the California Military Department in July 2015. An area of difficult for the department has been that not all branches of the armed forces have standardized training requirements. Under this MOU, the military department will assist us by acting essentially as a clearinghouse or a subject matter expert for military issues. We will continue to work together to identify changes to military professions and education, as well as changes to California licensure requirements, to ensure that gaps do not develop and that military members and their families remain a priority. As mentioned by the military department earlier today, we are encouraged by its Work for Warriors program with BSIS. With infantry being the largest military occupational specialty, this has been very beneficial to those men and women. In closing, the department has worked diligently to ensure that we provide military applicants and licensees with high-quality services, and it is indeed a priority of the department. I would also like to mention it's a priority personally as well. My father spent over 25 years in the military, so I know firsthand what that transition is like, and so I do want to just commend the committee for convening this today. Please let me know if you have any questions for the panel or myself.